Chapter 8. The next day, Oliver skipped home from school feeling like a giant boulder that means like a big rock, had been lifted off his shoulders. Finally, the awful remedials had come to an end, and he was going to be trained personally by the principal herself. Things were finally looking up, that means things were finally getting better. Entering his house, Oliver saw Mrs. Wordsworth and his mother seated at the dining table enjoying a pot of tea. "Oliver, welcome home," Mrs. Wordsworth beamed. "Your mother was just sharing with me about all the gadgets are like all the electronic things you have made." "That's right, Ollie," Oliver's mother replied, pointing to a fancy, that means a nice but complicated looking machine in the kitchen. "Remember how you took parts from our broken appliances and turned them into my birthday present?" Oliver looked down at the floor, his face red with embarrassment. "Mom," Oliver said, "why did you tell her about the dishwashing machine? It's so embarrassing." Mrs. Wordsworth slammed her teacup onto the table, almost shattering it. "What are you talking about, Oliver? It's not embarrassing at all," she replied. "Oliver, why didn't you tell me you could invent things?" Oliver shrugged his shoulders. You can Google image what this expression looks like. I didn't think it was anything special," he replied nonchalantly. That means like calmly and not enthusiastically. "Oh, Oliver," Mrs. Wordsworth replied with both frustration and sympathy. She got out from her seat and grabbed Oliver's hand. "Follow me," she said with a gentle smile. "I want to show you something." Quickly, Mrs. Wordsworth led Oliver to his garage. When she opened the garage door, Oliver froze with amazement and wow, surprise. The garage had been converted into a miniature workshop. Miniature, that was like mini workshop. There were tools of all shapes and sizes neatly arranged on a large table at the center of the garage. But what really caught Oliver's eyes were the shelves. Huge shelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling, and on them lay thousands of strange bits and pieces. There was a jar filled with a glowing gel, feathers made of steel, and a tusk that was as transparent as glass, yet hard as rock. "What are these objects, Mrs. Wordsworth?" Oliver asked curiously as he ran his hand across the items. Mrs. Wordsworth wrapped her arm around Oliver's shoulders. "Oliver, these are all the gifts from every planet we have rescued," she said with pride. "Unfortunately, that is too bad. Nobody knows what to do with them. But I wonder." Mrs. Wordsworth led Oliver excitedly to what appeared to be a spool of thread. "Oliver," she asked, "could you tell me what this could be used for?" Immediately, Oliver fished out a pair of scissors from his school bag and cut out a tiny sample. Analyzing the sample with a makeshift, that is a temporary microscope he made 2 years ago, he replied confidently, "This looks like the perfect material for a net. There are tiny hooks all over its surfaces, and with its unique microstructure, the more you pull on it, the stronger it becomes. But why do you ask, Mrs. Wordsworth?" Mrs. Wordsworth gripped Oliver's shoulders and stared excitedly into his eyes. "Oliver, I knew it! At last, we have found your power!" she cried. "What you just analyzed is the silk from a Moroccan worm. It took our scientists and engineers weeks to learn what you just discovered. Oliver, don't you see? Your power is in inventing." "A power in inventing? Is there such a thing?" Oliver asked suspiciously. "Of course there is," Mrs. Wordsworth cried, "and we'll prove it together. Oliver, how would you like to use our neighbor's presents to invent something that will work against monsters?" Oliver stared blankly at Mrs. Wordsworth, wondering if he had heard her correctly. "But I would not know what to make. I've never seen a monster before. Mrs. Wordsworth placed her hand on Oliver's shoulder and gave him a wide grin and a wide smile. But I have. I could share my experience with you. The question is, does this challenge excite you? Yes, of course, Oliver replied. It will be so cool to invent something for monster battles. Fantastic, Mr. Wordsworth cheered. Then we start straight away. Over the course of the next few weeks, Oliver experimented with hundreds of ideas, testing them at the backyard and gathering Mrs. Wordsworth's feedback. He suffered many burnt fingers and bruises. In one test, he almost broke his knee. Yet slowly but surely, Oliver worked to perfect his invention and even mastered how to use it. Wow, Oliver, this is amazing, Mrs. Wordsworth remarked as she held the final version of his invention in her hands. And in just a month, you truly have a gift for inventing. You know what? I bet you could pass a hero test with this, and I could use the results to bump you up to superhero class. Oliver's eyes lit up as though fireworks just exploded in his eyes. Really? Let's take the test now, he exclaimed excitedly. Not so fast, Oliver, Mrs. Wordsworth laughed. You need to learn monster combat, that means fighting, monster fighting first. Unfortunately, I can't be seen in school. Mrs. Wordsworth looked outwards in deep thought, pinching her chin. Wait, I've got it, she exclaimed, before looking down at Oliver with a mischievous smile. Oliver, she spoke, I have an idea.